Okay. I am Dr. Shahzad. I am fellow in Indus Hospital and Karachi, Pakistan. And I am very much thankful to the Indian Academy of Pediatrics and the critical chapter who gave us this honor to present our at the forum of the P2P webinar. And it's an international forum, and we are getting a lot, and hopefully we will also learn in future. So today my talk is based on the cardiac arrest, ROSC, return of spontaneous circulation, and the hypoxia ischemic encephalopathy. So there is no disclosure to my presentation. Let's begin with the story. There is a 8-month-old infant that collapses at home. Father vaguely compressed chest, blow in mouth, and reached the hospital in 5 minutes. CPR was performed for 10 minutes in emergency room. After that, he is currently in pediatric ICU where he is intubated on epinephrine infusion. There is extensive posturing at pain, and pupils are equal 3 mm in response and have a sluggish response. There is another story. She is a 9-year-old malnourished girl that was collapsed in the ward. She has severe electrolyte problems, and CPR was performed for 16 minutes in the ward. After that, she has been shifted in the pediatric ICU. Currently, she is intubated on epinephrine infusion. There is no response at pain. Pupils are equal. Size is 4 mm, and there is a sluggish response of the pupil. So these are the common scenarios which we encounter in our daily practice. And so actually, we did a CPR. After that, there is a lot of questions which we face that what should do now. Is it the end of resuscitation or there is a beginning of resuscitation, and what are the strategies to adopt? So today we will look all these things that we encounter in these scenarios. So the content outline we will briefly review. Today, the cardiac arrest, return of spontaneous circulation, post-cardiac arrest syndrome, and there will be another portion in which we will discuss specifically and more concisely about the hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy and the brain injury, its pathobiology, what's the cerebral blood flow, brain protecting CPR, and when to stop the CPR, cerebral monitoring specifically with the brain, and the brain-specific treatment, what is the prognostication and how to perform it, and what is the brain death criteria. So let's talk about the cardiac arrest. If we, whenever we talk about the cardiac arrest, it is very important to know the location. That's of prime importance, and whether the cardiac arrest occur in the hospital or out of the hospital. Because that have a different causes that leads to the cardiac arrest. Nadkarni and his colleagues done a research and found that in hospital settings, the hypotension and the respiratory insufficiencies are the main causes that lead to the cardiac arrest. And Young et al. And his colleagues found that the SIDS and the trauma are the main causes that lead to the cardiac arrest in the out of hospital settings. Whenever there is a cardiac arrest, it has been found that the patient who revive, almost half patient develop some kind of brain injury. And the leading cause of death after the cardiac arrest is the neurological, and other causes may include the multi-system failure and the cardiac causes. When we look at the reversible causes that lead to the cardiac arrest, there are many conditions that have been summarized by the American Heart Association as HNTs. And specifically, these conditions are related with many clinical settings. These include the acidosis, anemia, cardiac tamponade, hyperkalemia, electrolyte imbalances, and the respiratory causes and the cardiac causes, poisoning. So all these causes are actually related with the many clinical settings that lead to the cardiac arrest. If these causes are looked at time and managed, so that could be prevented, and the management of the cardiac arrest should be optimized earlier and more feasibly and more effectively. So there are many risk factors that are related with the cardiac arrest. If we see at the risk factors that are related with the poor outcome in the pre-arrest settings, in the out-hospital settings, the decreased age, SIDS, trauma, and the rhythm at arrival, if are the systole and the pulseless electrical activity, these are the things that are associated with the poor outcome. If we see in the in-hospital settings, that the factors which are related with the poor outcome that are included the increased age, endotracheal intubation, mechanical ventilation, initiation of the inotropes, and the arrest at night shift and the weekends. So these all things have been found in the literature that these include these points are related with the poor outcome in the before occurring of the cardiac arrest. If we see at the good outcome factors that are related during the CPR, in the out hospital settings, the witnessed cardiac arrest by standard CPR, less doses of the epinephrine used during the CPR. These are related with the good outcome. And the in hospital settings, if there is a CPR being run and at that time there is an early initiation of the CPR and the epinephrine was administered within 5 minutes and that the CPR was of high quality. Diastolic blood pressure was maintained between the 25 to 30, and if there is availability of the ECMO and ECMO was utilized during the CPR, these are the factors which are related with the good outcome in the in-hospital settings. So the goal of resuscitation is actually the achievement of the ROSC, return of spontaneous circulation. And what's that? If we found after the CPR there is a palpable central pulse blood pressure and there is a rise in the PET CO2 or there is arterial pressure waves are present, so we declare that the patient have achieved the ROSC and the stop the CPR. After that, the management is after arrest management. So if we see briefly about the epidemiology, it has been found in the literature that in hospital settings, the ROSC has been achieved in the 80% patient, and among that 43% were the patient that were discharged, and these are the quite a good number that has improved in the last decade. And in the out hospital settings, the ROSC has been achieved in the 36% patients, and the survival to hospital discharge has been improved to the 38%. So the goal of resuscitation is actually to survive with good neurological outcome, and we want that there should be a life with that have a good quality. So that's why the American Heart Association has replaced the resuscitation with the post cardiac arrest care. The post cardiac arrest care is actually after the resuscitation. It's not the end of resuscitation. After the resuscitation, the actual resuscitation starts. That would address the end organ functions, anticipate the post cardiac arrest syndrome, and there will be a early goal directed therapy treating the underlying cause. And there are the bundles and the checklist to increase the survival. So what is the post cardiac arrest syndrome? If we look at the pathobiology, the American Heart Association and it's earlier, it has been found in literature that there are the 4 key components that should be looked for and that should keep in mind whenever we are treating the patient after the cardiac arrest. The most important is the post cardiac arrest brain injury. After there is a hypoperfusion, what happens? There is a hypoperfusion ischemia of the brain cells, and after that, if there is a reperfusion, there is a hyperoxia, inflammatory, oxidative stress, and there is a seizure in encephalopathy. And the brain injury we will discuss also later in our presentation. With it, there is a post cardiac arrest myocardial dysfunction. Whenever there is a hypoxia, it leads to the hypotension, and there is a myocardial stenting into the heart, and there is a no flow phase. After that, there is a dysfunctioning of the myocardium that peaks in the 6 to 8 hours, and after the 24 hours, what happens, that myocardium starts recovering. But during that time, it is very important to keep the coronary perfusion and the diastolic pressure optimized. The third component is the systemic ischemia and the reperfusion response. What happens whenever there is a hypoxia and the hypotension? The body starts producing the anaerobic metabolism. After that, there is a production of the lactate, vasoplagia occurs, and there is a phenomena in which the body response is like there is a cytokine of surge. It's like a severe shock condition, and within 6 hours, 8 hours, there is a cytokine storms, and all the body has inflammatory markers that peaks very much. After that, there is a adrenal dysfunction, glycemic problems, coagulation problems, and also there are impaired oxygen delivery and the utilization. So all these are the phenomena that happens after whenever there is a cardiac arrest. So fourth phenomena that we need to keep in mind whenever we are treating to trying to treat the patient of the cardiac arrest is the persistent precipitating pathophysiology. What's that mean? There are the underlying conditions that may lead to the recurrence of the cardiac arrest. So it is very important to keep in mind all the factors like fever, shock, hypovolemia, and any other condition under pathology that may lead to the recurrence of the event. So we have to treat it at time. So the post-cardiac arrest care has been divided into the many phases that are the time dependent. First phase is the immediate phase that lasts for the 20 minutes, and in which we will address the ABC monitoring lines for the monitoring, and after that there is we have to decide either to treat that patient in this setting or we have to transfer it into the tertiary care hospital for the advanced monitoring and investigations. So and meanwhile we have to look for the causes to and try to correct it, and also look for the reversible causes that are HNTs and targeted therapies. After there is the intermediate phase that start from the 12 hours and remain for the 72 hours, during which we the therapies which we have planned and which we have started, we have to follow them, and we will have to plan the neuroimaging. And after that there is a recovery and the rehabilitation phase that start after the 72 hours, that includes the involvement of the family, physical therapy, and the cognitive therapy. It was said earlier that the rehabilitation should be started after the 7 days or after the discharge, but now the American Academy of Pediatrics recommend that it should be started within 72 hours, and we have to plan the rehabilitation at time. We have to involve the pediatrist that would start the family physical therapy, cognitive therapy, and the rehabilitation. So meanwhile, in among all these phases, it is very important to look for the factors that may lead to the recurrent of the events. So cardiac arrest, when happen, it occur again second time, it would lead to the bad prognosis. So when the patient has been revived and ROSC has been achieved, and we have planned all the phases accordingly, during that time it is very important to control and to target the main therapies. And these therapies will include the ventilation, hemodynamics, cardiovascular system, neurological system, and the metabolic system. If we address these entities, what would happen that we will not miss anything, and the therapies would be the goal directed therapy. So let's talk about the ventilation. When we have kept the patient on the vent, so adjust the vent settings according to the scenario, and according to the patient condition. And it is very important that we should avoid the hyperventilation. Hyperventilation after that time has been found in the literature to be associated with the bad outcome. And get in chest x-ray to get the tube positions and lines and any other etiologies. And if we talk about the oxygen level, what should be the level we maintain after the ROSC? The normoxemia is the standard, mean that after above 60 and less than 300, the oxygen level should be between it. If we can also target the SpO2 between the 94 to 99, and PCO2 should be between the 30 to 50, and if above 50 and below 30, it has been found by the Castillo and his colleagues that it is associated with the poor outcome. And the PET CO2 should be kept between the 35 to 45. If we talk about the hemodynamics monitoring, A line and CVP pressure line should be put in the for the monitoring of the pressures, and arterial pressure monitoring is better than the non-invasive BP cough monitoring. And the pulmonary catheter, it was being used previously, but it is not being recommended nowadays. And continuous ECG is also applied and should be monitored in all patients. And the cardiac telemetry, it's a central monitoring system for the hemodynamics monitoring, and wherever it is present in the advanced institutions, it is also very helpful for the monitoring. And echocardiography, in literature it has not been found when and how much frequency should we get for the echo. but after the cardiac arrest, there is a myocardial dysfunction. So there is to found the systolic or the diastolic dysfunction status, it is recommended to get it early as possible, so that we can plan according. And avoid the pyrexia, because the fever is it has been found with a poor prognostic marker. So a persistent fever, it should always be avoided. 1 degree centigrade rise in fever, it will increase the 10% almost CMR. If we talk about the cardiovascular system management, hypotension in first 6 hours is a marker of poor outcome. And it has been found by the Lin and his colleagues that if the patient after the CPR, normotension and the normal heart rate is maintained, it will lead to the good outcome. So fluid boluses are given for treat the hypovolemia if there is a need for the inotropes. Inotropes are selected on the dependence of the blood pressure. Either the hypotension shock, then start with the epinephrine. If there is a normotensive shock, then we try to start with the dopamine, dobutamine, epinephrine, and milrinone. Although milrinone is not suggested in the start after the CPR, because it may also lead the vasodilation and the hyperemia in the brain, so it may go to the detrimental effects. So there is also to look for the arrhythmias. Premature atrial contractions and the ventricular contractions are very common after the CPR, but there is no recommendation to treat them, and there is no role of the prophylactic antiarrhythmic drugs. And we should, if we are using the antiarrhythmic drugs, always avoid the drugs that may lead to the QT interval prolongation. That may include the amlodipine and the procanamide. And if any time there is an SVT or VTAC after the ROSC, it is also associated with the poor prognosis. If the patient there is a refractory shock and the refractory arrhythmias, and the patient condition is not reviving to optimal level, then the ECMO should be used. And ECMO have been found in literature with a good outcome after the ROSC. So it's a good and better strategy to use wherever possible. So neurological therapeutic strategy is very important, and we will discuss in detail in our second part of presentation. Metabolic care is very important. Get in blood gases, electrolytes, creatinine, calcium levels, and the coagulation profile. And also target the normoglycemia between 80 to 150. And address the adrenal dysfunction specifically after the cardiac arrest. There is no study to indicate its dysfunctioning, but in critically ill children, almost 30% of the patient have the adrenal dysfunction. So it is important when to use the hydrocortisone. There is no specific recommendations, but if the patient is not responding to the inotropes, then we can use hydrocortisone. Urine output measurement is very important. And the Neumer and his colleagues have found that after the cardiac arrest, there was the prevalence of 35% AKI. And among them, there was 6% of the patient that got RRTs. If we talk about the infection and the bleeding problems after the cardiac arrest, infection is quite common, including the pneumonias and the sepsis, and it is very important to look for the signs of the infection. So there is no recommendation to start off the antibiotics, and the empirical antibiotics and the cultures should be started with the local policy. And it has been found that there is no role of specific anti-inflammatory drugs like steroids or cyclosporins or erythropoietin. So they are not recommended nowadays. And we should be monitored for the bleeding also, but there is no role for the prophylactic platelets or FFPs use. In many institutions, the checklist and the bundles have been established and they are being used. That includes all the strategies that we have discussed in our slides, including the oxygenation, ventilation, hemodynamics monitoring, and the temperature management, neuromonitoring, glucose control, and the sedation and the prognosis. So these checklists, they have been also found with in a as a part of the good outcome. And so we are also trying to making such checklists, so we shouldn't miss anything, and that also come in our all the therapies. So when we talk about the long-term outcome, it has been found in a Spanish study that in out-hospital cardiac arrest, 85% patients have been discharged and they have the 1 year follow-up. They have a neurological outcome was good. And in THEPCA trial, out-hospital cardiac arrest, hospital to discharge ratio in that patient, one third were alive at 1 year, and one third have the good neurological functions, and one third have the severe neurological deficits. And after that, even after the discharge, it has been found a change in the neurological outcome. So 10% were the patients after at 1 year follow-up. Among that 10%, 67%, two-third were the patient that whose neurological status improved from the previous or from the baseline at the time of discharge, and 33% were the patient who deteriorate further. And the THEPCA trial was also performed, and so it was a in-hospital actually data. Hospital to discharge was that 47% patient who alive at 1 year, and there was a 30% were the patient whose status changed further after the 1 year. In THEPCA trial, there was many neurological scales can be used. In THEPCA trial, the Winland Adaptive Behavioral Scale (WAB) scale was used, and many others in many other literature, PCPC, and that is the Pediatric Cerebral Performance category, or the Pediatric Overall Performance category. These are the scales that have been used in literature for the assessment of the patient's neurological behavior. So overall, if we talk about the neurobehavioral outcome, these patients after the cardiac arrest, they have a less IQ as compared to the normal child population.